What a glorious shot there of the Thames from our drone that will be following the racing today. We'll get some great pictures from that, I'm sure. Just a gentle breeze pushing onto the ripples of the water for these crews to deal with in this first set of matchups here between the Cambridge women and University of London, the two A crews here on your screen. And we can see head-to-head James Trotman for Cambridge, coxing and steering that crew down the course, going up against Darcy Beckett, who will be very familiar with these waters. The UL Boathouse, of course, just past the finish of the traditional boat race course.
Yeah, it's a good advantage to be able to train on this river all the time. So I'm sure Darcy has a good perception of where he wants to put his crew and the best water, best places to be.
So we can just cast an eye over the Cambridge women there. Caoimhe Dempsey in the stroke seat, the only returning blue to this crew. Backed up, though, by an experienced hand along the boat race course, Gemma King, who I know has raced in the lightweight boat race and also in Blondie as well. Grace, is that correct? Or is it just the lightweight boat race?
Definitely the lightweight boat race. I'm not sure if she's been in the Blondie, maybe. And then you've got Isabel Bastian, Freya Cato, Jenna Armstrong, who was in Blondie last year, Karina Graf, Rosa Millard, and Alex Riddle-Webster.
Yeah, so a couple of returners there, but only Caoimhe Dempsey, who knows what it feels like to race in the blue boat. And then for the University of London, Darcy Beckett, who we've already mentioned in the cox's seat, Jessie Martin, Phoebe Snowden, Emily Lindberg, Georgie Robinson Ranger, Iona Dixon, Esme Jones, Trudy Marks, and Selena Jones. So umpire Matt Smith, we had Matt Smith umpiring the Trial 8s that took place. If you joined us back in December, Grace and I took you through the Cambridge Trial 8s. It was Matt Smith who was directing from the umpire's launch, and he had a lot of action, didn't he, to look forward to. We had a restart. There was so much going on in those Cambridge Trial 8s.
He did. He really had his work cut out for him in that race, so I think he'll be anticipating another busy race with these ones. The way the fixtures work is they're not doing a full course race. They'll be splitting it into two and doing 2 half courses. So they're shorter races, but I imagine just as action-packed.
Yeah, and lots of lessons there. We talk about the crews learning lessons, but Matt Smith will be gearing up to umpire the main race on the 26th of March, and there's plenty of learnings to take on what to do in certain situations. We've got an experienced crew from UL who will know these waters, so hopefully we'll be a little bit more, I guess, competent at understanding the lines, but very different racing side by side with another crew. That's something that the University of London won't do particularly often.
No, and so this will be a great experience and put both crews under a bit of pressure, and I think both crews might have different strengths and talents and advantages, so it'll be interesting to see who on the day can rise to the occasion and come out on top. And then also it's an interesting situation because you've got 2 opportunities. You've got a restart and you've got a second race, so you can, even if you can adapt to what happens in the first one and learn from that, then you're going to be advantaged for the second. So yeah, you can't sort of win one and then not improve. And you see them sort of lining up and heading towards the bridges and heading towards the start.
Yeah, a very sort of together push off there from the University of London. They look like they mean business here, and this will be a really huge opportunity for them, right? One of the big university programs here in the UK to be put on the stage with the boat race crews to see how they match up. And obviously Cambridge will go on to race more and more fixtures throughout the season, but this will be a one-off opportunity for UL this year. Good prep for their women's head and some of the later races in the season, but this is really a once-in-a-season opportunity.
Yeah, and I think from my experiences of racing the fixtures last year, it's the Cambridge Oxford boat race is such a well-known race that all the crews that come up against either the Cambridge crews or the Oxford crews in the fixtures really want to take it to them to prove that actually we're actually just as fast out there in different clubs and different universities. So I feel like everyone is out to win. And there's there's the weighing up for the Cambridge crew. They are training to try and do the whole course race. So how they approach this, whether it's a shorter race, so do they go for slightly more intensity than they would in a longer race, or do they try and stick to their race plan and treat it like a full race to rehearse for the boat race? So it'll be interesting to see their tactics and see how much everyone blasts out of the start, considering you're only doing half the course.
And like you say, this was you this time last year, Grace. What is the direction, from the coaching team? Is it to treat it like it is the race, and racing it to that middle point is how you would be racing then, or shorten it and go out a little bit faster?
I think you go to win. And the course distance. So I think you do want to be on your general base rhythm, but equally you're not going to sit there and let someone walk away with you and stay on that rhythm just because you're practicing that. So I think competition comes out, and I think you're naturally going to be slightly higher intensity for this, and they look like they're getting pretty close to a start. And
there goes the flag.
There it goes.
Matt Smith, the umpires, just put down that red flag, which means the start of this piece to halfway. So 2 pieces, the first one to halfway and then halfway to the finish. And gosh, it looks a lot bumpier than it does, looking from the bank on this camera. Looks like a little bit of chop there, Grace, for them to handle.
Yeah, I think this is an interesting angle because it can look a bit deceptive, but that does look like they're going to have some tricky conditions to sort of manage, especially in the start when it's all sort of a little bit chaotic anyway, and you've got to come onto your rhythm, manage the conditions. But it looks like both crews have had a pretty good start, and as we said, the nature of a slightly shorter race, it's probably even more important not to get behind out of the start because you've got less time to make up for any sort of ground lost right at the start.
This is going to be a huge test here for the Cambridge University Boat Club women. They've just got about a canvas up now as they come past us here at London Rowing Club, where Grace and I are based. So a small advantage here in these early strokes. But the University of London, they're going to be one of the toughest bits of competition here. Cambridge unfortunately lost to Brooks a couple of weeks ago in that fixture. University of London made it to the semi-finals of the Island Challenge Cup at Henley Royal Regatta last year. A lot of this crew were part of that team, so they're really a strong outfit.
They are. They'll be a really good stepping stone, I think, for the Cambridge crew. And initially, it looks like I think Cambridge may have had a little bit of a wake up from the last fixture, and they've come out very strong. And I don't know if it would be unexpected, but they've got a good lead off the start. So I think they'll be happy with the shift that they've already made from the last fixture. But yeah, as you say, the UL crew is experienced, and they do have good talent in there, so I wouldn't rule them out just yet. But yeah, very clean start for both crews, but yeah, Cambridge has slightly taken the lead.
Yeah, and a good stride out there for Cambridge. And this is the point where we're coming up towards Barn Elms Boat Club on the left. That's the building you can see just to the left of your picture. Grace, at this point in the race, we're not even a kilometre in. Where are you thinking about settling onto rhythm?
It's normally around here. I think normally around the 90-second mark is where you start to push out and get onto your rhythm, and then that's not a quick thing to do. You might start at the 92nd, but that might take you a minute to slowly step down. You don't want to do it in one aggressive move, but it looks like Cambridge has done that very well, and also know that the first corner is their advantage. So I think they'll be really wanting to make the most of it before they get into the corner where UL can sort of take the inside and have a slight more advantage. But it looks like Cambridge has done the push on, settled onto a good rhythm and look confident with their stroke and their race pace.
We can see there the University of London, who are now having to play catch-up, but as you've rightly pointed out, Grace, their favourable bend, just starting to come into play in a moment's time. We're looking at the stroke of the University of London, Jessie Martin, an experienced oarswoman from, she represented Great Britain at the Europeans last season. And they're looking at her opposite number, Quiver Dempsey. We've already said the only returner to this crew. And Quiver wasn't in the stroke seat at any point in last season. So what sort of change do you think that will make to this crew?
I think she brings a good experience to the crew, and having done the boat race once out at Ely, once on the Tideway, she'll be able to lead from the front, and I think the communication between a stroke and coxswain is incredibly important. So I think having someone with her experience in there is going to be vital, which is probably why she's made the move up there. It's always a toss-up though, because I think sometimes when you're a bit further back in the boat, you can also have a good old influence on the crew as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And the influence that she's having is making an impact. Clearly they're now a length up on the University of London. They've just about broken that clear water, which I think, again, given that it's going to be UL's bend in a moment's time, how important is it to get that distance?
It's important, because once you get that clear water, you can start to sort of come across it. From this angle, it looks like they are starting to kind of cut into UL's water, which they're definitely still moving away, but you want to make sure you are steadily moving away, because you don't want to get caught in the danger of cutting across and then another crew being able to come at you, and you could be in serious issues then. That's a probably slightly clearer view, but you'll be able to tell that UL will be getting those dirty puddles down from the Cambridge crew, which is not easy water to row in, and I think you can kind of see a few little splashes there of them kind of battling those puddles.
And I think perhaps UL have just about touched overlap again. I'm sure Darcy Burkett in the cox's seat will be keeping her crew informed of that contact. And yeah, you can see it there from the drone shot, just holding round the bend, which is exactly where Cambridge will want to be. They won't want UL to gain on their bend, but that hold is really important. And both crews, you know, University of London at 34, Cambridge at 33, looking fairly settled and relaxed. No one really chasing it at the moment.
No, and for being slightly shorter races, I might have expected them to be up slightly higher, but then equally the stage of training they'll be at, they wouldn't have really got into that real race pace top end speed. So I think they'll still be able to find a few more pips in this last month or two before the boat race, but at the moment it's looking pretty controlled and well within their own means. But yeah, they seem to steadily almost be moving away on the outside, which is impressive, and it gives the crew a lot of confidence when you can do that, and you know you're at a slight disadvantage having to go round the longer way of the corner, clearly. But yeah, they'll be sort of getting momentum from that, and then when they can get onto the straight, be like, okay, now is our time to really go.
We're looking at the faces of the middle four there from the University of London: Emily Lindbergh, Georgie Robinson, Raina Iona Dixon, the three in the middle. And as we zoom out now to the umpire's launch, it's still holding for UL. I think there's just like centimetres in it that Cambridge are just bumping out, but UL and Cambridge now taking very different lines around this corner.
They are. It seems like a very interesting line, and I can't tell, but yeah, it seems like Cambridge has sort of drifted out maybe slightly too far. But yeah, there was a point where they were definitely on different tracks, and I think Cambridge, if they were smart here or maybe a little bit earlier, should have really put the foot down, and that's where they can be kind of decisive, because as soon as you let a crew have another sniff, it can kind of give them a little bit more excitement. But once again, this is a learning thing, so they might look back on that and be like, there was actually a moment maybe about a minute ago where we could have almost shut this race down, and it seems like they're kind of letting them get in back with a sniff.
Yeah, it was a very decisive move, wasn't it, there from James Trotman to move out a little bit further into Hammersmith Bridge. You can see the impact that has had. Overlap still again now for UL. They'll have been very grateful for that opportunity to start grouping back, and it'll give them that little bit more confidence, Grace.
Yeah, and then the crew starts to sense that, and I think the coxswain will get excited. The energy boosts, and the rhythm still looks good, but you can definitely see a few pain faces. This is when they're very far apart for racing on the Tideway. Normally you see the crews a lot closer together.
Yeah, and again, I know that, the University of London row on this stretch, they train on this stretch, they certainly will know what the stream is doing, and the impact that has on the racing water, and they look very sharp, and they're utilising the water really well. They seem to be catching on really well at the front end, so yeah, I think they've got it within them to start moving back here. Cambridge I can't tell whether it's Cambridge are a bit too far out or UL are a bit too far into the bank, but certainly they do seem very far apart.
Yeah, I think, and they might be coming up to another boat here, so this is going to add a little bit of wash and wake for them to deal with, which will be, you can gain or lose quite a few seats when you get hit with wash, and they look, I'm sure they're fine, but they do look like they're coming along close.
Yeah, and that's one of the things with the fixtures, very different to boat race day. The river does not get closed to traffic, so they have to battle with whatever elements are out there, but navigated extremely well there by the University of London. We're back onto Cambridge here, and it's James Trotman just taking a glance across to the left, looking very calm. We often see coxes in kind of racing positions, screaming at their crews, but very composed there from Trotman.
Yeah, he does look very calm, and I think these are such good learning opportunities for the coxswains, and I'm sure he'll be soaking in every moment and trying to stay focused. But he's got his crew in a good position out in front, and being able to, when the whole crew can see the crew behind them, it sort of relaxes everyone, and you're not having to tell people we're this far behind or this far in front.
So the bow pair there for the University of London, Trudy Marks and Selena Jones. Selena Jones in the bow seat furthest to your right, women's captain this year of the University of London, and we'll be able to see all of her teammates in front of her putting in a lot of work here to try and pull back the deficit that Cambridge have managed to open up on this tideway stretch. And we are coming into the final kind of few hundred metres here of this piece. They'll be really yearning for that halfway point. If you squint, you can see the Ayot in the distance, which is where we're moving this piece to. And Grace, how is it feeling at this point as someone that's done this piece? Oh, there you go. And finishing, I think, slightly early perhaps, or we just can't see it off camera on the right.
I think it's a hard mindset when you're doing these shorter pieces, because you know where the finish line is. You're always working towards the finish line, so they'll be finished and they'll be exhausted now, but in the back of their mind they'll be like, that is half the boat race. Like, we still have to now probably do a relatively quick turnaround, and they will get their second piece going down. But sometimes the shorter pieces are almost a little bit harder, because you're more aware of where you are. You're not zoning out into a real middle pace rhythm. But yeah, there looks like some tired people out there, but I think they'll be pleased with how that first one went, especially after the fixture last weekend. So I think it's a really good shift around from Cambridge, but now they'll have to regather themselves, know that UL is probably going to come out harder, learn from the last one, and maybe not want to lose as much off the start, and then it's an even playing field again. You get a whole restart.
Yeah, and learnings from both crews. I'm sure it's an opportunity for them to reflect. They're going to spin quickly and move into the second piece. And I think that the second piece is interesting, because you get that opportunity for a bit of a rest. And an opportunity to convene and to chat and talk about what went well, what didn't go so well. And we've seen really big changes in the past between, first piece and second piece with fixtures. I remember last year, big turnarounds, even leaders and winners. That was almost a length and a half there, I would say, that Cambridge won that piece by. There is an opportunity, given how close it was off the start, if UL can hang on, for it to be much more reduced than that. But we're about to kick off with the A crew fixtures. Once again, this is piece 2 here between UL and Cambridge. And we'll be getting underway in just a moment. Like you say, lots of adjusting here when you're in the middle of this river, and a little bit more kind of agitated crew members trying to get one up.
And I think you've done a piece, the lactate's high. It's not been long enough to fully recover, so I think stress is high, and you don't want to start behind off the start. So I feel like crew, as a rower, you looking over, you're hoping your coxswain is pushing the boundaries but not pushing them too far. But then you can get into the habit of, you're like, well, we're both just touching up, and they're underway. So they have done it from a standing start again.
There's a really quick start there from the University of London on the right-hand side of your screen, trying, I think, to get the advantage. Like we say, it was very even before, and so I think if they're trying to jump and be a little bit more aggressive, a little bit more powerful off the start, it'll give them a bit of a buffer for that middle bit of rhythm that Cambridge seem to have the upper hand on.
Yeah, and they've, from memory, switched over stations.
Yes,
and
correct.
so I think that'll give Cambridge a good experience of, they get this initial inside bend, but they're going to have to work really hard in the second half of this race, because they're going to come into the bend where it favours UL, and it's hard to tell, but it looks like UL's done pretty well at the start, but I think Cambridge is still managing to creep away, which is impressive, because it's that second time you've given the other crew I guess an opportunity to learn and reset, but they've had another good start, and they're really making the most of their inside.
Yeah, I think Cambridge actually have gained more in the first few 100 metres than they did in the first piece. As I say, UL really jumped, but have kind of not settled as well into those starting strokes as Cambridge have done, and it's almost a length, about 3/4 of a length now to Cambridge already, and we're barely 2 minutes into the piece.
Yeah, it's a good start, and maybe they've just been able to cope with the lactate burn a little bit more than the other crew, and I mean, it looks pretty lumpy and bumpy out there, so maybe also just managing the conditions a bit better. And it doesn't really seem to be affecting them much at all. Like, they're making it look flat and easy, but you can see when you look along the side of the boat how there is quite a bit of movement on the river, and I think they're doing well to make it look this easy.
Yeah, a really big advantage already for Cambridge, and UL have got a really tough job ahead of them, a huge mountain to climb, being on the outside of this bend, the second part of the Big Surrey Bend, and you can see hard work and grimacing faces on the face of Esme Jones in the three-seater returner to the University of London for this season, and as moving forward through the boat, a really cool, calm pace being set here by Jessie Martin, and I think a slightly higher rating than we saw in the previous piece, Grace.
Yeah, it looks like they've sort of come in with slightly more intensity, and I guess that's what these are about, trying something new. Maybe they were like, we've got to step up and see what we can do, so let's try and change something. It might pay off, it might not. But the Cambridge crew is looking relatively calm. It looks like Quiver's setting a good rhythm and leading well, and it looks relaxed. It looks like they've got time. They aren't rushing. They get a good lock onto the water and sort of move the boat. Each stroke is being used, and you're getting the most out of each stroke, which is important when you're onto your second of the pieces in the fixtures.
And this is where the University of London might be able to see a glimmer of hope as the bend runs out for Cambridge and starts to move in the favour of the women in purple. And this bend, you can see, I think, the bow ball edging back for the University of London. They've got over a length to try and pull back, and I would say, less than 10 minutes to do that.
Yeah, it's a big gap to make up, but they do look like they aren't letting Cambridge run away with it, and this is probably a very important part of the race where they'll know that they don't want to give away clear water, because then Cambridge can start coming across and then you lose all your advantage. And Cambridge will be thinking the opposite. They'll be wanting to get out in front enough that they can start coming across, and doing pretty well. I think they seem to still be edging, considering they are on the outside as well. And thinking back to the trial eights, we saw a lot of tight racing. So I think that they can cope with the pressure. They can cope with the side by side down to the line, and I think would have learnt a lot from those close races and be like, let's try and make it not that close again, because it's a little bit close for comfort. So they seem to be wanting to shut it down a little bit earlier.
And again, just I've been so impressed by James Trotman in the coxswain seat for Cambridge, who has just looked so calm, very poised. As I said, no big movement, no huge kind of, sways of the body, just very quick, very calm turns. And, the ex-St Paul's schoolboy will be used to, again, the St Paul's Boathouse on this course, will know the river, will know what he wants the crew to do. And again, hugely experienced, a silver medalist from the Junior World Championships, and again, great opportunity for him to showcase what he knows about this very changeable stretch of river.
Yeah, I think growing up coxing on this river is a huge advantage. From my experience, I did one season rowing on this river, and even still by the end of the season, I was learning something every session we went out in. It's so changeable. There is so much to it, and then you change the conditions, and that changes it again, and every part is different. So his experience will be so valuable, and he seems to be doing well. Like, I think he's cutting it fine enough, but then also giving his crew space to relax and not feel on edge. So he's doing well, and this is where he really wants to start coming in to make sure that that's when UL can't start to sneak back in on their inside.
Yeah, and some beautiful water up here. I think it's calmed right down with the wind direction, not impacting this stretch as much. Lovely calm conditions, and it's exactly what you will want as your body is starting to feel so tired, and you have to think a lot more about the technical aspects of getting your blade in the water, to not have choppy waters. One less thing to think about.
Yeah, it's a real tosser. It's interesting though, because sometimes when I look at flat water, all I see is pain. I'm like, there's nothing else to focus on, as you say, which is great when you get tired and you don't have to worry about your blade clipping a rogue wave or anything. But then equally, there's nothing to slow you down, and it's just how hard you can go. There's no limiting factor. So yeah, it's you always want nice water, but I think it definitely brings out the most painful races as well.
Yeah, and lots of pain faces now. This is the point that they'll be starting to wind up. They'll be able to see the railway bridge in their vision, and I think that is the last big landmark that these crews row under before they reach the final post. So it's really crunch time now, and despite being so far up, I expect Cambridge will still be practicing how they'll want to finish their race.
Yeah, it's very hard to practice a wind when you don't have another crew pushing you. So they'll be wanting to use these fixtures to really practice that, because yes, you can do it in training, but it's just not the same when you've got the pressure and they've got a crew sitting there. They've got a decent lead, but it can still change. You can't rule them out yet. So it'll be a good opportunity to start practicing how you're going to step up, because once a crew's tired, you need a very clear plan about how you're going to increase the rate, increase the pressure, and all of that. And you learn so much from each one. So this will be when they're starting to go through that sequence, and they would have talked about that. They would have a general plan, and you can see them, I think, slowly starting to increase their rate, and it's all about taking speed with it.
Yeah, UL trying to rise to match that increased rating from Cambridge. This is the point where they'll be motivated to just push everything at it to close that distance, because it is, it will be recorded, that distance, and it will be reviewed, and clubs up and down the country will be assessing how much did Cambridge beat UL by, and they'll want to close that as much as possible.
Yeah, I think Cambridge will be really happy with this performance. It looks like UL's really winding to the line as well, but they seem to be, maybe Cambridge seems to be on a slightly lower beat, but maybe doing it more efficiently. It's finding that balance of really building to the line, but taking your speed with you. But a good performance from Cambridge, because it's a very strong UL crew. So to come away with 2 wins against a very strong crew, I think they'll be really, really happy with that step up, and you gain so much confidence from these fixtures, not only learning things, but any win you can take is a good thing, and it sort of makes you more excited for the next block of training. You go back with a little bit more motivation, so I think it'll sort of boost the crew for their next training block.
Definitely, and this University of London crew littered with under 23 talent, with multiple kind of Henley Women's winners. They're a really seasoned crew, and even as individuals, but a lot of them have rowed in previous seasons together. The likes of Emily Lindberg and Georgie Robinson Ranger and Phoebe Snowden, all part of that UL crew that have moved through. So they know each other as a unit. So, like you say, impressive for this Cambridge crew to come together, newly formed, and to take on someone like that.
Yeah, and it bodes well for both. It was an impressive performance from UL as well, and you can go back and watch the replay of the first race, where I think it stayed closer for longer. I think they really, both crews wanted to get one under their belt, and UL managed to, I think, cling on for a little bit longer than they did in the second piece. But you can see it's nice clean starts, and these are great opportunities for the crews to practice the start, because that's often one of the trickiest things to get right on the tideway with the water. It's tough.
No, absolutely. And even, we saw a couple of years ago in the Oxford women's crew on race day, there was a blade lost off the start. So it can happen on the day. And so, yeah, like you say, the more opportunities to kind of drill in those strokes, how it feels under pressure up against a crew that's a bit of an unknown. I think, again, just those little bits of confidence that they'll draw upon when there's a lot of eyes watching them on the 26th of March.
Yeah, and you want to get these things right before that day, because it's a lot of training for something small like a crab in the start to go wrong. So these opportunities are so valuable for that. And this image here shows the distance in the second race, and it definitely started to extend a bit more, and Cambridge, I think, had the stamina and the fitness to back it up, which is surely credit to all the training they've been doing, and maybe a sign of the stage of their season they're in. They're coming into the serious sort of the business end of this season, and they've been away for a training camp after Christmas, New Year's, where I think a lot of things really click for the team. It's the chance to only focus on rowing. You're not trying to navigate around your studies, so I think they would have come away stronger from that, and they're starting to, I think, put out some really good performances.